Continuing where I left off, Book 12, The Fortunes of War. Turnus now saw how Latin strength had failed, how the day's fight was lost and they were broken, saw that they held him to his promise now, all eyes upon him. But before they spoke, his passion rose, hot and unquenchable, as in the African hinterland a lion, hit in the chest by hunters, badly hurt, gives battle, then at last, and revels in it, tossing his bunch of mane back from his nape. All fighting heart, he snaps the shaft the tracker put into him, and roars with bloody maw. So Turnus in the extremity flared up and stormed at the old age. No one waits while Turnus shirks a battle, no pretext allow Aeneid with rage to Aeneid, or take their challenge back. By God, I'll fight him. Father, bring sacred offerings and state the terms of combat. Either by this right arm I sent to hell that Dardan prince who left his Asia in the lurch, and let the Latins rest and look on, while I alone disprove with my sword point the charge against war. Or else let him take over a beaten people. Let Lavania be the winner's bride. To this Latinus answered steadily, Soldier without a peer, as you surpass the rest in heroism, all the more must I labor to think and weigh my fears, taking account of all that may occur. You have your father Danas' realm. You have your many conquered towns, gold and the heart. To spend it are not lacking to Latinus. Here in Latium and the Laurentine land are other girls of noble blood unmarried. Allow me these reflections, painful, yes, but open and above board. Take to heart this fact. It was not right that I should pledge my daughter to a suitor of other days. Gods and prophecies of men forbade. Affection for you, our Rutilian kinsman, won me over, and my wife in tears. I broke my bonds of duty, stole the girl, though promise, from her husband, and took arms against the will of heaven. You see what followed, Turnus, the bloody wars and the defeats, the bitter days you, most of all, endure. Beaten in two great battles, barely alive, we keep Italian hopes with our town. The Tiber's current warm still with our blood, the open land white with our bones. And why, again and yet again, am I pulled back from action? What mad dream blurs my resolve? Granted, with Turnus dead, I am prepared to make them partners in the realm. Why not stop fighting, rather, why he lives unharmed? What will Rutilians or your family say? What will all Italy say if I betray you? Heaven forbid! To death while you contend. For marriage to my daughter, only give thought to the veering waves of war. Take pity on your aged father whom Artie keeps at home, secluded from us and for long. All that he said affected Turnus's fury. Not in the least. It mounted all the more fervored at words of healing. When the man could speak at last, he said, My lord, I beg you, put this reckoning for my sake aside, for my sake. Let me bid my death for honor, father. I too can make a rapid cast of javelins, not puny when they strike. Blood flows from wounds I too can give. This time his goddess mother, she who, when he runs, hides him in the womanish cloud, who hides herself in empty phantoms, shall be far away. But now the queen, Amata, terrified by the new hazard of the single combat, wept, and pale as death clung to her ardent son-in-law. Turnus, I beg you by these tears, by all you hold at heart for me, Amata, you are one hope, our stay in grim old age, Latinus honor and authority. Rest in your hands, all our declining house. Now leans upon you, this one thing I beg. Refrain from single combat with the Trojans, Any mischance that may await you there awaits me too, for with you I'll forsake this hostile daylight. Never as captive shall I look on Aeneas as my son. Lavinia, listening to her mother, streamed with tears on burning cheeks. A deepening blush brought out a fiery glow on her hot face, as when one puts a stain of crimson dye on ivory of India, or when white lilies blushed, infused with crimson roses. So rich the contrast in her coloring seemed. Desire strung the young man as he gazed, rapt at the girl. He burned yet more for battle, briefly answering Amata. Please, mother, no tears for me, no parting omen, so unpromising as I go out to combat ruled by iron Mars. No longer is Turnus free to put off risk of death. Idmon, come, be my messenger, say this to the Phrygian tyrant, words not to his liking. When dawn tomorrow, borne from the ocean stream, on crimson chariot wheels, reddens the sky, he need not lead the Trojans in attack on the Rutilians. Let all Trojan weapons rest, Rutilians, rest. With our own blood let us two part an end to war, and there on that field let Lavinia be the prize. With this he whirled away into his quarters, called for his team, and smiled with joy at horses winning before him. These were the two that Orythia, consort of the north wind, gave as a glory to Palamis. Horses rivaling snow in whiteness, wind in speed, and flanking them, the nimble charioteers clapped hollow palms to chest and combed their manes. There round his shoulders Turnus donned his cuirass, glinting with golden and pale copper scales, made ready sword and shield and helm with horns to bear his crimson plume. The sword was one the fire god himself had forged for Daunus, dipping it white hot in the wave of Styx. And finally, from where it leaned against a pillar of the hall, he picked a spear, his powerful hand gripping that hearty shaft he took in battle from a Rucan actor. Shaking it, making it vibrate, he cried out, Spear that never failed me once when called on, now the time has come. A champion once carried you, Turnus bears you now. See to it that I smash down the body, and tear away with my strong hand the breastplate of the Phrygian image, and befoul in dust those overlocks, curled with hot iron, drenched with liquid mirth. To this length, driven by passion, he gave off a sparkling glow from his whole face, and fire flashed his eyes, as a wild bull at bay will give a fearsome bellow, and whet his horns to fury on a tree trunk, striking blows against the wind, kicking up spurts of sand in prelude to the fight. Likewise, meanwhile, Aeneas, fierce in his maternal armor, whetted his edge for war, and roused himself to anger, full of joy by the terms he offered, war should cease. He comforted his officers, allayed pale Iolaus feared, recalling fate's design, then ordered men to take Latinus in assured reply, and set conditions for the coming peace. The next day, dawn had barely cast its glow on mountain tops. At that hour, when the sun's heaven climbing, teams strive from the deep exhaling light from the flaring nostrils, when Rutilian troops and Trojans under the city walls laid out a field for combat. Some built hearths and grassy altars for their common gods, while fire and fresh spring water were brought out by priests in cloaks. Rosemary round their brows, the compact legion of Alcanians debouched now from the crowded city gates. The Trojan Tuscan army from the plain streamed up in various accoutrements, ranks glittering steel, as though rough work of Mars had called them, and amid their numbers captains wheeled about in pride of gold and crimson. Menestheus of Asacarus' line, valiant Acellus, and the master of horse, Massippus, Neptune's son. At a trumpet note, each side retired to its appointed zone, with lances fixed in earth and shields as rest. Then matrons and townspeople pouring out, with old men and infirm, thronged towers and roofs, while others clustered at the tall gateways. But gazing from the height we now call Albin, nameless then, it had no fame or glory. Juno surveyed the plain, the facing lines, Troy's and Laurentum's and Latinus' town. Promptly she turned, immortal to immortal, and spoke to Turnus' sister, nymph of ponds and purling streams. Heaven's King Jupiter, for the maidenhead that he had ravished, gave this the divine dignity, rule over limpid things. Nymph, she said, in loveliness of rivers, cherished by me, you know I honor you above all Latin girls who have entered great-hearted Jove's unwelcome bed. I've kept most happily for you a place in heaven. Now let me tell you of your grief to be, lest you think me the cause. While fortune seemed complaint, and the fates let power rest with Latium, your brother and your city had my protection. Now I see the soldier meeting a destiny beyond his strength. His doomsday, mortal shock of the enemy, are now at hand. I cannot bear to watch this duel, this pact. If you dare help your brother more at close quarters, do it, and well done. A better time may follow present pain. The words were barely out of before Juturna's eyes brimmed over tears. With her clenched hand she thrice or 4 times beat her comely breast. This is no time for tears, the goddess said. Be quick, go snatch your brother back from death if there's a way. Or else renew the war, cast out the pact which they drew up. I'll be sponsor to your audacity. With this last urgent word she left her wandering torn, in turmoil from the pang her heart had suffered. Meanwhile the kingly men appeared, Latinus mighty in aspect in a 4-horse car, his shining brow crowned with 12 golden rays, in token of the sun his ancestor, while Turnus rode behind his snowy team, handling a pair of spears broad in the blade. Then from his quarters Lord Aeneid came, the father of the Roman race, aglow, with starry shield and armor forged by heaven. Close at his side the second hope of Rome, Ascanius. A priest in a clean robe brought out a boar as young and a sheep unshorn, to place before the altar's fire. These men with eyes turned to the rising sun bestowed their handfuls of salt meal, took knives to mark the foreheads of their beasts, and poured from shallow ritual cup libations on the altars. Aeneas, the god-fearing, with drawn sword spoke out his vows. Son, be my witness now, and this land for those sake I could endure hard days and many. Then the Almighty Father also, and his lady thou, Sartunia, more kind to us, goddess, now I pray, and thou too, famous Mars, whose hand hurls down on men all wars according to thy will. I call on spring and streams, and all the powers, both of high heaven and the deep blue sea. Should victory fall to the Arsenians, Turnus, it is agreed that in defeat we shall retire upon Evander's town. Iolaus quit the region, and his people never after return in war, or send the kingdom challenges to arm. And if on the other hand the day is ours, conferred by divine victory, as I think, and many the gods confirm it will be their will, I shall not make Italian underlings to Trojans. For myself I ask no kingdom. Let both nations, both unconquered, both subject to equal laws, commit themselves to eternal union. I shall give rituals and gods to both. My father-in-law Latinus, let him keep his arms, and keep his royal authority. My share will be a town with walls, laid out and built by Trojans. Lavinia will give the town her name. In these terms first Aeneas declared himself. Latinus followed with a skyward look, his right hand lifted to the stars. Aeneas, I swear by the same powers, by earth and sea and stars, by the twin children of Latino, Janus' 2 faces, and the nether powers, shrines of pitiless Dis. Let this be heard by the Sky Father, who with lightning bolts can seal inviolate the pacts of men. Here, as I touch the altars, I appeal to ritual fires and meditating gods. Never shall that day dawn that sees our peace, our treaty, ruptured by my countrymen, however things fall out. No force on earth can make me swerve from my intent. No force, though it embroiled the earth and watered and flood, to pour land into sea, heaven into hell, just as this scepter here in my right hand will never put out foliage or shade. Once cut from the live tree bough in the forest, torn from that mother, that laid bare by steel of branching arms and leaf, this one-time bow, this artificial hand had fitted well in a bronze sheath and given to our Latin lords to carry. By these spoken vows they sealed the pact between them in sight of captains on both sides, then cut the throats of dully hollowed beasts over the flames, and tore the living entrails out, to heap in freshly loaded platters on the altar. On the Rutulian side, the coming match seemed more unfair, however, as time went on. Fears came and went, troubling them all the more, when seeing the contenders close at hand. They saw their strength unequal. This disquiet multiplied now as Turnus walked in silence, reverently and humbly to the altars, eyes downcast, his cheeks drawn, his flesh pale. Now, when Turnus saw troops in commotion, whispering even louder, and losing heart, she moved into the ranks, disguised as Camers, an officer whose ancestry was noble, his father's valor a matter of renown, and he himself a Cisseus in arms. Taking this form, amid the ranks she went, aware of their condition, putting out one rumor and another, asking them, "Does no one blush, Rutilians, to expose one life, one soldier, for so large a force? In numbers of good men, in fighting power, are we no match for them? Look, all here, Trojans, Arcadians, fate-driven Tuscans, foes to Turnus. If we take them on, with merely every other man, we barely find a foe for each. Turnus will rise in fame to those high gods upon whose altars he makes the offering of his life. He'll be alive upon the lips of men. Not so with all the rest. Losing our fatherland, proud masters on our backs, will be enslaved for never stirring on this field today." This fueled the fire of what soldiers thought, and louder murmuring crept through the ranks. Laurentine too, in Latin, their mood changed, and men who lately hoped for rest from combat, safety for their way of life, now felt a hankering for weapons, wished the pact could be unmade, and pied Turnus' lot as underdog. To add to all this, then, Jurtna gave a more insidious stroke, for high in heaven she produced a sign more potent to confuse Italian minds, a strange, deceitful tableau. Winging down through rosy, downlit air, Jove's golden bird came chasing offshore seafowl, noisy flocks, and with a swoop upon the waves caught up in crooked talons a surpassing swan. The Italians gazed enthralled. Then all the birds in flight wheeled around with screams wondrous to see, their wings darkening heaven, and in the cloud harried the enemy through the air until their pressure and the swan's weight broke its grip. His talons dropped the prey into the river. Then, gaining depth of cloud, he soared away. Cheers at this omen broke from the Rutulian ranks, and hands were freed from arms. Tolumnius, the Argard, gave cry. Here was the sign I often looked for in my prayers. I welcome it. I see the gods behind it. On with me. Follow my lead, poor countrymen on whom that vulture from abroad has come to scare like light-winged terms or gulls in war, and to lay waste your seaboard. He'll be gone, his canvas wide wing toward horizon cloud. It is for you to take heart all together. Close your formations, and fight on to save the prince this raiding stranger took for prey. He finished, then ran forward with a spear to launch it at the facing enemy. The whistling shaft of Cornell sang ahead, unwavering through the air. At the same time, a great shout sounded from all companions, their hearts grown hot with turmoil, as the spear flew on toward with 9 handsome brothers stood, all of them born to the Arcanian Gylippus by his faithful Tuscan wife. The spear hit one of them just at the waist, where the sewn belt rubbed on his upper belly, and a brooch clamped the strap for either side. The spear that passed from rib to rib brought down this well-built soldier, all agleam in armor, pitching him on the tawny sand. His brothers, brave men, now as one in shock and grief, some with swords out, some with steel to throw, came in a blind rush forward. but Laurentine squads moved out to meet them, double quick. Then from the other side again came Trojans, Tuscans from Agilinia, Arcanians in painted gear, now charging side by side. One passion took possession of them all, to make their sword their arbiter. They ripped the altars to get firebrands. Missiles flew in darkening squalls over the whole sky, a rain of steel, while sacrificial bows and hearth fires of the peace were snatched away. His treaty boy Latinus took to flight with images of his defeated gods. Others caught up their chariot reins or vaulted in the saddle, drawing blades, advancing. Avid to break the pack, Messapus rode against Alustus, and the Etruscan prince who wore a prince's blazon. This poor captain flinched aside, then stumbled as he whirled amid the obstructing altars and went down on head and shoulders. In a flash Messapus rode up with his spear, high on his horse, and even as the prone man begged for mercy, thrust hard downward his beam-like shaft. Then he called out, "That does for him, a richer carcass for the great gods." And Italians running up to spoil the still warm body, out of one altar Cornelius pulled a half-burnt firebrand facing Ebescus as he came lunging for a stroke. He hit him between the eyes with flames. His bush of beard flared up and gave a smell of burning flesh. Cornelius closed and caught his left hand his staggered enemy's hair, then struck a knee into his groin and bent him to the ground to be dispatched with a sword thrust in the side. With naked blade, Podalirius rose behind the shepherd Asulus as he ran along the front through spears, but Asulus whirled his axe backward and split the skull of his enemy from brow to chin. Gore splattered on his armor. Harsh repose oppressed his eyes. A sleep of iron and an eternal night they close. Meanwhile, the man of honor, Aeneid, stood bareheaded with his right hand out, unarmed, and called his troops. "Where bound? Are you a mob? Why this outbreak of brawling all at once? Cool your hot heads. A pact has been agreed to. Terms have been laid down. I am the one to fight them. Let me do so. Never fear. With this right hand I'll carry out the treaty. Turnus is mine. Our sacrifice obliged it." But even as he called out, as he spoke, a winging shaft, look, whizzed and struck the man, sped by who knows what hand, what spinning gust, what stroke of luck, what god won this distinction for Rutilians. Glory for the shot when afterward suppressed. No claims were made by anyone of having hit Aeneid. And I'm going to leave it off there. Thank you for watching, and you can give it a thumbs up, thumbs down, leave a comment, subscribe, or just do nothing and watch it. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.